this idea of the sexless marriage and, sex is an unimportant part of a relationship, where I say the opposite is true. Sex is actually the glue that binds you together, and it's your super fuel. When you're really tapping into your sexual energy as a couple, you unleash the superpower, creative, manifesting energy, confidence, vitality that you then channel into all parts of your life.
This season of Reconditioned is made possible thanks to HIFAS TERRA, and I'm a little bit obsessed with them and I want to tell you why. So if you follow me on social media, you'll know I talk about mushrooms a fair bit. Yes, I am that wild, and no, not the psychedelic kind. Not this time anyway. I've known about the crazy health benefits of medicinal mushrooms for a while, especially after watching Fantastic Fungi on Netflix, but I never found a brand that I fully trusted. And then I came across HIFAS TERRA, and I am not exaggerating when I say it has been life-changing. They have medicinal mushroom products to support autoimmune diseases, allergies, hormonal imbalances, gut health, brain function, emotional well-being, musculoskeletal issues. The list is endless. And because they're one of the few mycotherapy companies to actually carry out clinical trials on their products, they've been able to develop their Onco range, specifically for cancer. And potentially my favorite, they have products for children's immune systems and the gut-brain axis. Great for ADHD, sensory issues, and gut support. These have got my kids through this winter of illness, and they've made a huge difference to my son's sensory challenges. I'm swearing by them. HIFAS TERRA mushrooms are not only certified organic, but they use the fruiting body of the mushroom as opposed to the root, which even the so-called top mycotherapy companies are not doing, because it's more time-consuming and more expensive, but HIFAS are. Spoiler, you get more benefits from the fruiting body, which is one of the reasons HIFAS products are more effective. The concentration and content of their products are also much higher than standard brands, and the company are constantly striving for quality, effectiveness, and safety, putting over 60% of their profits back into research. These products have changed my life, and I want you all to have access to this level of healing. So visit hifasdaterra.co.uk, that's HIFASDATERRA.co.uk, and use code Lauren15 for 15% discount. Thank you so much to HIFAS TERRA. Hi, I'm Lauren Vaknine, and you're listening to the Reconditioned podcast. I created this podcast following my journey from severe disability since infancy to complete wellness, as a way to share my passion of healing the whole self. Because I learned in my own journey to wellness and through my 2 decades in the wellness industry that it makes no difference what you're here to heal. It all requires the same whole person approach. We tackle everything from trauma, health optimization, and neuroplasticity to manifestation, holistic parenting, and everything in between to help you create an optimized life of well-being, abundance, self-mastery, and purpose. You're not meant to live a life of stagnation, and you're not meant to be just fine. So hang around and let me help you recondition your life back to wholeness. Hi everyone, thank you for being here. I'm so excited for you to hear this episode. Kim Anami is, oh my goodness, what an education on sexuality and sexual pleasure. And I just want to say, first off, don't discount this if you see yourself as a non-sexual person, if you don't have an active sexual life, whether you're single or whether that is in partnership. Please listen to this, men and women, because there is so much to learn from this episode about how stepping into our sexuality, learning how to move into deeper states of pleasure, increases our vibration, raises our vibration, therefore making us be able to manifest more because we become more powerful, because pleasure makes us powerful. And the practices that Kim talks about are things I had personally never heard of before. So it's been an education for me going through her work and going through her salons, what she calls her courses salons. And today we were talking specifically about vaginal kung fu, because that one is about to launch. So if you suffer from prolapse, or anything at all. She said, I said to her in the episode, who is this course for? And it's really just about strengthening your vagina so you can experience deeper levels of pleasure, as well as healing your vagina of prolapse, of incontinence, of sexual trauma, of pretty much anything. So that course is about to drop. And I think she keeps registration open for a couple of weeks only. So I'll put the link in the show notes so you can access that and get all the information there. And I just highly recommend starting with this course, because when you start with these practices for yourself, strengthening your vagina, learning how to use the exercises when you do this course, she sends you the most beautiful yoni egg, vaginal jade egg kit. It's so stunning. And you get to go through all these practices to strengthen yourself so that you can bring this incredible sexual energy to partnership. So listen, enjoy. I want to hear your thoughts on this episode, because it's obviously very different to other episodes that we've done. And I do speak in the episode about, okay, how is this related to health and well-being, growth? Well, it is, because your sexuality is part of you. And when you learn how to embody that and step into that, you become more powerful, you become healthier. Because when you experience joy and pleasure, you raise your vibration. This is part of health because of how when you embody this, you exude something completely different. And I know this through my own experiences. So I hope that you will listen to this and really kind of listen with an open mind and an open heart, regardless of where you are currently when it comes to your sexuality. And go ahead and follow Kim Anami on social media, on Instagram, because her stuff is amazing. And her podcast, Orgasmic Enlightenment, is an education in itself. And if you are a woman and you are listening to this and you have a partner, get your partner to listen to this. If you are a man and you are listening to this, take heed. Listen to what she says and get your partners to listen to this. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I'm so excited for you to hear it. And once again, if you do enjoy this episode, please consider leaving me a review, a 5-star rating and a review, because it pushes the podcast into other people's stratospheres if you do that, so more people see it, so more people can have access to this work. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Kim Anami is a holistic sex and relationship coach, writer, and speaker. Her work is a spiritual synthesis of over 2 decades of Tantra, Taoism, transpersonal psychology, philosophy, and a host of quantum growth accelerating practices she uses to propel clients into higher stratospheres of connection, intimacy, energy, and creativity. Her musings on life and love have graced Playboy, Elle, Marie Claire, Shape, the Sunday Times, the Daily Mail, GQ, and national talk shows. She divides her time between many locations and a host of beaches in between, where she not only lives and surfs, but lifts objects with her vagina. She's even created and amassed a following behind her hashtag Things I Lift With My Vagina, which you can check out on Instagram at Kim Anami. Her courses, which she calls salons, are life-changing, and we're about to talk about them now. So Kim, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. As you know, it's a big deal for me because I am a big fan of your work. And I guess where I want to start is people listening might be wondering how what you do is related to wellness. But I think that women and men, let's focus on women for the moment, but everyone stepping into their sexuality and understanding the power behind their sexuality and the health that can come as a result of experiencing pleasure is part of wellness. So that is why I have you here. So before we start, what things do you lift with your vagina?
You name it, I can lift it. So everything from fruit, tropical fruit, small furniture. I've lifted things like surfboards in Venice Beach, a Murano glass chandelier in Venice, Italy, a piece of the Berlin Wall at the Berlin Wall in Germany. in Bali, I love sampling all the tropical fruit and lifting them with my vagina. So when I took this whole thing on the road, my goal was to lift objects that were indigenous to various regions with my vagina. So that was the theming behind it. And yeah, been to many different places and showcased my vaginal talents along the way.
Yeah, which we all get to see, thankfully, on Instagram, which has been such an education. So before I start getting into all the good stuff, I always start by asking my guests, what have you done so far today to support your wellness?
What have I done so far today? So it's morning for me, and I have meditated and done some red light therapy. And if I'd had a little more time, I'll probably do it later, is some form of exercise I would normally do in the morning. Yeah.
Do you do the red light therapy on your vagina?
Yes.
Same. I'm a massive fan. And I loved your initiative this summer, the past summer, about sunning our bits. And I actually did the hashtag and, of me, doing that, and tagged you in it. And kind of set a whole wave in motion of people all over the world starting to sun their bits. I want to go into your backstory and how you got into this, but can you explain the purpose of why it's important to get the sun to those places?
Right. And look, normally I'm in a non-tropical area right now. And if I was in the tropics, I would forego the red light and just use sunlight, sunlight on my body every day for about an hour at least, and then sunlight directly on the genitals. So, how did I find out about genital sunning, or what's the benefit of it?
Yeah. What's the benefit? Because I think a lot of people are scared of sun generally anyway, but, when you mention sunning your genitals, people are like, whoa, will I get burnt? Why am I doing this?
Right. And I think you nailed it, that starts with this manufactured fear of the sun, of blaming the sun for all kinds of things like cancers, when it's really the opposite, that the sun prevents these things. And moderated sun exposure, controlled sun exposure is actually very nourishing and healing, and boosts our system in multiple ways. And so the Taoists, like, we'll get into this a bit later, but my whole practice of lifting weights with the vagina involves using a jade egg, and that is a 5,000-year-old Taoist practice. And so a lot of their ideas and techniques in terms of conscious sexuality were really resonated with me, because they look at sex as this pathway to enlightenment rather than this taboo, shameful experience, which is really everything you see in our modern world. And so they talked about the importance of getting sunlight on the genitals, and particularly at the perineum. So the perineum, the area between our bits and our butt, and that it's an acupressure point, it's a doorway. And so we can directly mainline sunshine in that way as well. And so if you try it, you'll see how it feels. Like even 5 minutes with the sun penetrating your genitals gives you this overall body high. You can feel aroused from it and energized from it. And so there have been studies done with red light exposure on definitely male genitals. I'm not sure about female, where testosterone production increased by something like 300% and 500%. These were studies back even in the 20s. Wow. So this has been, and like there are these sunlight clinics in Switzerland that they used to treat people for different diseases and tuberculosis in the early 1900s, where they would wheel patients out into the sun and expose their whole bodies to the sun. So we are living in a fabricated psyop reality when it comes to the lies about sunshine right now. Yeah. And then, of course, any opportunity to, I'm all about exposing as much sun as possible to, or as much body as possible to the sun, and then exposing our genitals is like a high grade way to get that energy and nourish our genitals. And so people usually have very immediate responses, and you can share your experience, like how it feels to either get sunshine there or use red light in the absence of sunshine.
Yeah, well, I live in the UK, so there's a lot of absence of sunshine, but we've got a red light panel that we use a few times a week, very frequently, because I feel like we need that. And actually, my health is really, I've noticed so many different things happen in my body through using the red light, but especially on my husband and I make a conscious effort that when we're doing it, we do it on our like we do the whole front of our body, legs open. So it's it feels great. It's amazing. Yeah. So for those who don't know of your work yet, and actually I don't know the history of how you got into this, because the stuff you talk in your podcast is life-changing, and we'll talk about your courses, which are unbelievably life-changing as well. But your podcast is an education. It's such an education. But when I listen to it, I'm like, how does someone get into this and know this much about sex and how to have these deep orgasms? You talk about, clitoral orgasms being kind of just the surface of what an orgasm can be, and cervical orgasms and vaginal orgasms being a lot more intense. How did you learn all of this, and what was your kind of journey to this?
From a young age, I had a strong awareness of my own sexual energy. And then when I began exploring sexually, I had some very potent cataclysmic experiences where I felt like it brought me more into who I was, right? Like that I felt self-realized after having these experiences. And I'd been studying about Maslow and psychology, at this time. And so all of that kind of fit. And, and obviously like that was nothing like, again, the taboo and the shame and all of the restriction around modern day sexuality that you normally would see and be exposed to. And so I was just like, wow, this thing is like a portal into other dimensions, these sexual experiences. And then later I found Taoism and Tantra and realized like they were speaking that same language as me. But even prior to that, I had, G-spot orgasms and cervical orgasms and clitoral orgasms. And that was all from my own exploration, whether it was by myself or with a partner, is just really, I think because I had that sense, this faith that sex was some kind of really portal-like magical transporting system, transformative power, that I just gave myself to it and found all of these things in my own exploration. So no one taught me there was a certain kind of orgasm or how to do it. I had zero technique given to me that was all just following this sense like there's something really important here, and being open to it and then having more and more of those kinds of life-changing experiences and having the faith to keep going. And also seeing that the longer I would make love for, the more powerful they were. Mm-hmm. And so I was very fortunate early on to have some partners who just were very, very long lasting and dedicated to the art. And again, I don't think they didn't show me technique, but they were just into the long haul. Mm-hmm. And it was within that I think you get those levels. It's like that's kind of the 10,000 hour thing. You break that down to like a 1, 2, 3 hour sex date where the universe begins to reveal its secrets to you, that in a 3-minute encounter, and statistically speaking, most men ejaculate within 3 minutes of intercourse. Nobody's getting to these deep places, neither man or woman, if they're having that kind of sexual experience ever. It's just going to feel like something that you bust out as stress relief, rather than my whole notion of orgasmic enlightenment, that you can find God through sex, that you can find this portal to other dimensions of reality through your genitalia.
Mm-hmm. My question that I was thinking when you started talking, were you raised kind of not around any shame surrounding sex? Because it's very unusual to have that, I guess, that faith and that dedication with it. Because often, I mean, I was raised in it. My sex was never taboo in my house. My mum was always very open about sex. So I also never had that. But even like as a girl growing up, as a teenage girl, even around your peers, there's lots of shame. The things you see on TV, how did that not kind of affect you in that way, and you kind of carried on this path?
Well, I think it did. And yet, because I had that strong inner sense of what this was, even if I couldn't fully articulate it, that's when that I held on to that. And then I think that we all have to go through some level of sexual initiation and block clearing and examining all of the ideas and beliefs and projections that we are imposed upon us, right? Like, for example, as a woman, I think no matter how liberated you might grow up, the idea of Madonna whore, right? It's pretty much an archetype that takes place in every culture. A woman's a virgin or a slut. There's not this happy medium for a woman to be a sexually expressed, healthy, voracious being. And so we have to create that within ourselves and own that within us. And even men hold those projections as well. Yeah. And so from my work is all about helping people to find those false beliefs and preconditioned ideas, programming that they've taken on, and bust through it, right? Because I believe that underneath it, everyone has these abilities. Like, I have something I call the Anami guarantee, which says that all women are multi-orgasmic, can have G-spot orgasms, cervical orgasms, squirting orgasms, ejaculate that hits the ceiling. Everyone can shoot ping pong balls from her vagina. Every woman has a voracious libido. Every man can be multi-orgasmic and last for 8 hours at a time and learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation. I guarantee that every person can do these things. And that's very opposite to what you might hear from a typical sex coach, like, oh, there, little girl, it's okay if you can't do that. Don't worry about it. Or medical science, oh, there is no such thing as a G-spot. Oh, clearly you just don't know how to fuck your wife, but you're trying to make a study out of it to justify that. Is just busting through all these myths. So I wouldn't say I grew up in a particularly like liberal household. I wouldn't say it was really like bad shame rammed down my throat, but just kind of the general energies, I think, and ideas that are floating around our culture. But because I had kind of a strong sense of that and faith in myself, is that I was able to hold on to that, I suppose.
I guess when it comes down to it, it's destiny, isn't it? Because I suppose it's the same with me. How did I hold on to this belief that, holistic and a holistic approach to healing was going to heal me, and conventional medicine wasn't going to do that for me, even though the whole society around me told me otherwise. I suppose once you're on a path to something and you feel that in you, you have that innate intelligence that guides you on your journey, on your destiny, with your dharma, you somehow just stick to that and follow it, right? Following the path.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I think all people who end up being innovators in some way, or who break the mold, even within their own personal life and journey, right? Like I think that's the price of admission sometimes, is having to buck up against. And those are all kind of like tests of your resolve. And to be like, okay, do I buy into your truth, even though you're trying to ram it down my throat? Or do I stick to the truth inwardly that I know? And I think what goes along with that is a level of courage. Right? All people who break through conditioning have to be connected to their own courage, because they have to step out sometimes by themselves. They have to face criticism and haters, or whatever you want to call it. But if your belief is that strong, they kind of ping off of you, right? Yeah. Like you just be like, you're wrong. You have the courage to stand up and say, like, oh, well, it sucks to be you. Like, you can carry on in your whatever, limited belief system, but I'm on my journey. You can come along or get off the road.
Yeah. When you're at that point of you are so living in your truth, you stop questioning it. And it is true. It's funny because when you said, no, you're wrong, we've got a piece of artwork in our kitchen that says your opinion is wrong. And I always love that. I guess, so a lot of women that I hear speaking will say things like, my husband and I don't really, we don't really have much sex, but that's okay. Like we don't need that. We're okay. And I just don't think everyone needs that in their relationship. Right. I want you to talk about that, or like really speak to that from the perspective of these women that might be listening, being in those relationships, thinking that is true. Because I've heard on your podcast, women, because you have Well Fucked All Stars, which is just the most brilliant title for these women that come on. And because I want to explain as well for anyone listening who thinks, no, this isn't for me, that there are some women on your podcast that were literally the other end of the spectrum, not thinking that they needed sex, not ever having had I listened to one episode where a woman had never had an orgasm. She was married for years, let alone a cervical orgasm. She'd never had an orgasm. So for all those women who are listening who might be thinking, it's fine, like my relationship is as it is and we just don't need sex. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'd say that's a cope, right? And that's culturally reinforced, this idea of the sexless marriage. And, sex is an unimportant part of a relationship, where I say the opposite is true. Sex is actually the glue that binds you together. And it's your super fuel. When you're really tapping into your sexual energy as a couple, you unleash the superpower, creative, manifesting energy, confidence, vitality that you then channel into all parts of your life. And so, yes, like we've had women come into my work, and we profile both men and women in my podcast, and we call them well-fucked all-stars. And these are people who've really applied themselves and committed to the work and then had these really stellar results, like almost unbelievable, right? Like if you didn't hear them telling the story, and hear their authenticity, you'd be like, whoa. And one of those examples, like I have many women, we have one, there's an episode called How to Have Vaginal Orgasms, G-spot, cervical, etc. And this woman had never had any orgasms before, not even clitoral. And she was what she would have described as an underfucked woman. She was naggy and bitchy and angry with her husband all the time. She had one child at that point, and then somehow she'd come across my work and decided to just give it a shot, right? And she threw herself into it. And she, she had a job, she had a 1 or 2 year old child, a husband, and she just made it happen, because people will come up with all of their excuses. And having children is a very socially acceptable excuse for not being intimate with your partner. And she would be on her way home from work, and she would stop the car and pull over for 2 hours and self-pleasure in her car. Or when her son was having a nap, she would go into the bedroom, instead of napping herself or doing chores, she would self-pleasure, right? And one by one, she got to all these different orgasmic states. And now to the point where she had a fully orgasmic birth, right? Or several of them. Her births have been actual orgasms, not a trace of pain, just pure pleasure and psychedelic transcendence. And so when people get into that space, and I've got lots of couple interviews too, where they will tell you the differences in their relationships, where they had maybe the same rationalizations. We just don't have time. We have other things going on. It's not that big a deal. We're such good buddies and we're such good partners. The sex doesn't really matter, right? Oh, we're not that sexual. Like bull fucking shit. I completely call out that notion and assert that everyone is. And if you aren't tapping into that energy, you're operating at a massive deficiency. You just don't know it yet. And so every woman can get there. And if you think that you don't need it, it's a lie. You're lying to yourself. You don't know what you don't know. And once you start to know that and explore these things, you'll see yourself wake up and never look back. And a great way to do that is just start listening to some of my podcast episodes and my videos, especially where we have interviews with these people, and you can hear them tell their story, and they've probably been exactly where you are, and now they're on the opposite end of the spectrum.
Here's the thing about stress and anxiety. Our bodies have not evolved to manage the level of stress we're faced with today, which means that we are constantly in fight or flight mode. And you'll feel this through anxiety and overwhelm, and also through your chronic health problems. Modern life breeds stress, which breeds dis-ease. But if we want to be well, we have to lessen that stress ourselves. Now, I've personally been reducing my stress and overwhelm for 9 months now, using the SENSATE. It's a small palm-sized device that sends infrasonic waves through the chest in order to activate the vagus nerve and calm the autonomic nervous system, which is the body's command center. You use it while playing the specially composed hemispheric audio within the app, and the majority of people report feeling calmer after only a short session. Everyone I lend it to ends up buying one because of how much calmer they instantly feel. Now, I'm particularly recommending the SENSATE to anyone who suffers from anxiety and wants help calming the nervous system, those who want to deepen their meditation practice, and people who are looking for ways to be calmer and more grounded. You can get £30 off the SENSATE by visiting getsensate.com and using code Lauren30. That's GETSENSATE.com, Lauren30. Thank you so much to Sensate for partnering with Reconditioned. Now back to the episode. Yeah, and I can speak to that just from starting, having those early days of kids and being like, I just, sex is just not on the card. I don't feel great about my body. I'm breastfeeding, I this, I that. To going into this journey with my husband and opening up our sex life to something more than what was, I guess, conventional. Studying Tantra and just implementing new practices and experiencing different things. And I mean, he's your biggest fan. So like he would listen to your I would walk in, we've got a little gym space at home and I'd walk in there. He'd be on the cross trainer and I'd like, oh, I hear Kim. But it is because, like your salons take it to the next level. And I want to get on to talking about your salons, but just as an entry level kind of introduction into your work, the podcast just gives people the belief at that point that these things are possible. And I just know that the difference, my husband always says, it's not that it's about the sex, it's what the sex does for us in our union and what those practices have done for us in bringing us to another, it adds another layer to our relationship that wasn't there before. The understanding that comes as a result of having that connection on a deeper level that's not just right, okay, quick, let's do it then. Well, it's Saturday, I better get naked. And actually wanting to and actually having it just builds a connection that's different to what I had before with my husband. And that's super powerful because then that takes you, and it's really hard to explain, right? Because I find myself like, I should be able to articulate this better, but I'm not. But it's just kind of what those sexual practices have done. And like you say, you can find God, enlightenment, through sexual practices. And I have experienced that. I genuinely have experienced it through certain things that we've learned through your work, being able to get to those levels, like, when you have the crying fits after you've had an orgasm and you're like, something's just moving through your body and then you're just releasing something and you're crying and you're laughing. And it's just, crazy what it does for your relationship when you've experienced that with a partner and with yourself. I think that anyone listening who is single, like there is so much, it doesn't have to be with a partner, right? Like it's just so much you can, like you said about that woman who would just do all these self-pleasuring practices.
Yeah. And then take that back into her relationship. But lots of women do, and men do, my salons as single entities, and they cultivate all these skills and this self-knowledge, and then they up level going into their next relationship. Because you're now vibrating at a different frequency, right? You've looked through, you've cleared some blockages, you've feng shuied your sex belief system, energy, and then you attract somebody who's a higher caliber than looping patterns you might have been stuck in the past.
I'm really glad you touched on that, because I wanted to ask you from your perspective and through your own words, how does stepping into your sexuality in this way increase your ability to manifest?
So that's one of my favorite topics in this realm. So the whole notion here is that sexual energy is life force energy. This is the energy that creates new life. And if we're not creating babies with it, we can actually consciously learn to tap into that energy and harvest it, and then channel it out into every part of our lives. And so over the years, I've watched this happen where somebody may have been, so again, this idea that you're operating at a deficiency is that every part of your life then gets sucked into this vortex of your black hole of lack of sexual connection. So rather than life force energy that's going out into the world, you're sucking things and negativity and attracting it into your life and into your space. And so there's countless examples where everything from people's careers to their financial situations sensations, to their bodies have been transformed. So you're getting in touch with their sexual energy. Like, for example, people who, let's say they work in more of a 9-to-5 job that's more pay the bills and not an expression of their true dharma, the more that they inhabit their sexual energy, which is really their essence, right? That is your genetic blueprint, essence of who you are. They begin to inhabit and wear this energy. They start to make choices in their lives that are more in alignment with the truth of who they are. And that might mean quitting a job that's not really, their heart really isn't in it, and gravitating towards something that it is. And that'll happen naturally without them being, okay, today's the day I'm going to quit. They just find themselves unstoppably overcome with this momentum that's propelling them towards the things that they love and are in harmony with and that turn them on, right? Versus the things that deaden them. And that happens in relationships. If the partner joins the journey, they will elevate their sexual connection and their relationship. That spills out into their children even. Like, I've watched where families become more cohesive and harmonious. Couples who are not connected, that they will that will show up in their children acting out in some way. And then couples magically get more in sync and harmony. They're making love regularly, and suddenly their children calm down. They're better behaved. They're more affectionate, right? They're not acting out in ways. And you could say, oh, it's just a coincidence, but it's not. When you start to see these changes, as I've seen them happen, right, over hundreds and thousands of people, and then you start to see them in your own life, it's a pattern. It's a pattern that's like recognizable. Weight loss, right? People who've been carrying, like, I believe weight is really unprocessed baggage, right? Like, that we carry things on our body that we haven't been able to metabolize. And our sexual energy acts as this incredible combustion engine to go in there and alchemize all of this dross in our field and just get rid of it. And, years ago, after a really difficult breakup I'd been at a set point weight for a couple decades. And I just gained 10 pounds, like, out of the blue. I didn't eat differently. I didn't stop exercising. It was like the unprocessed weight of this relationship. Like, it ended very abruptly. And so there wasn't a really good sense of closure and processing. And then I really dove into, I created something I call meditate, masturbate, create, which is a really conscious self-pleasuring practice where you spend some time in meditation. I use a word that I call Hu. It's an ancient name for God, energy, the universe, whatever you want to call it. I'll chant that for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. I self-pleasure, where I'm breathing throughout my self-pleasuring process and moving sexual energy throughout the body, anywhere from 15 to 40 minutes, and then go do something creative with that energy. I've revved up this sexual engine, and now I'm going to go. For me, it's usually writing, but you could do anything. You could go to the gym and work out. You could clean your house. You could build something in your yard. Any number of things qualify as channeling that creative energy. And the weight, it just came off because I was metabolizing that experience and processing it through my vagina, like through the ultimate alchemical crucible. And, I see that happen with clients all the time, where you defy the laws of physics, right? Suddenly, like, weight just is gone in a week. And you're like, I didn't do anything different. You didn't have to do anything different physically, apart from go fuck yourself or make love with your partner, right? Go fuck yourself in the most magical, conscious way. And that's another differentiation, right? It's not just about having lots of random unconscious sex where you're racing to orgasm. It's about using these experiences to become more conscious, more connected to yourself, more connected to your partner. I differentiate what I call gourmet sex and junk food sex. And I'm all about the gourmet sex, or like healthy food versus not healthy food. You can feel the difference in your body, right? Anyone knows if you're on a reasonably healthy diet and you eat something that isn't very good, you'll feel it. You'll be sensitive to that. And most people know when they have a less than savory, casual or, not very like committed, let's say, sexual experience. And no judgment. I have no judgment about that. It's more like the quality of the energy that you're bringing, right? And receiving. And you can get this kind of hangover, like, ugh, like, what did I just do? And, and let into my body or put my body inside out, right? Those are legit consequences that we have just been kind of trained to brush aside, right? In the pursuit of like, oh, it's like you can just fuck anyone, anywhere, and that's no big deal, but it is a big deal. Our bodies register all of these energies and encounters, but we've been kind of made to think in this like modern, super cool way, like it doesn't matter. It does matter. And again, it's not from the place of judgment morally. I don't care. I could not care less. It's more about what is the energetic consequence and barometer of what you're experiencing.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that, because the more I move through my journey, the more everything for me is about energy. So like you say, it's not ever coming from a place of judgment. It's coming from a place of how is that energy going to serve you? How is it going to impact your energy? And, it's everything from kind of who you socialize with, who you, even without having sex with someone, you can be around someone and they are, what Christiane Northrup calls energy vampires, and drain your energy. So it's an energetic thing more than a judgment on someone sleeping with someone random. It's how's that person going to impact your energy. And I don't know if you've ever come across the book Wild Power by Alexandra Pope and Shani Hugo Wurlitzer. They're here in the UK. They wrote this book, which was my initiation really in understanding about charting my menstrual cycle and really kind of connecting with myself on that level. And they say something in the book that is so powerful. It's just the most simple quote, but so powerful. They say, when a woman is turned on, she's powerful. And I think everything you've just spoken about really kind of speaks to that, because the raising of our vibration, of our energetic vibration through pleasure, when we experience pleasure, we raise our energetic vibration, and therefore we become resonant with higher vibrational situations and people. So it makes sense that if you are experiencing those levels of pleasure, say as a single person, and then you raise your vibration, you're going to attract a much more high vibrational partner than potentially you did before.
Very much so.
Yeah. So let's talk about your courses, or salons as you call them. They are pretty life-changing. How many have you got? There's quite a few, right?
There's 5 main ones. Yeah.
And so you're very close to launching Kung Fu Vagina, which is incredible, which is just mind-blowing about what you can. Let's start here. Why do Kegels not work?
Right. So the original Kegel exercise that Dr. Kegel invented in 1947 to assist women with repairing urinary incontinence involved putting a device inside the vagina that she would contract against. And that creates feedback and resistance in the vagina. It's called the Kegel pereniometer. And using that, he had a 90% success rate with his work. And then over the years, for some reason, doctors modified the exercise and just said, look, you can clench your vagina, but you don't have to put anything in it. And I personally think it's because they're just terrified to tell women to put something in their vaginas. It just seems so taboo. And so immediately the effectiveness tanked 50% and it's been tanking ever since, right? The stats in America, according to Yale, are that 60% of women have urinary incontinence issues. 50% of women after childbirth experience pelvic organ prolapse. Like it's dismal, right? Something is not working out there. So the jade egg notion that I referenced before, this Taoist practice of putting an egg carved, like piece of jade carved in the shape of an egg. There's a hole drilled through it with a string. You put the egg in the vagina, the string comes out, and you can attach objects to the string. And so you have that mechanism of feedback and resistance, just like lifting weights, right? If you went to the gym and then just like laid down next to a barbell and didn't do anything to it and got up and it's like, okay, I'm done my workout, versus like, there's like a sequence of sets and reps and conscious working out. one's going to get you results and the other one isn't. And so the Kegel that people talk about, this air guitar, clenching your vagina at random in the wind, isn't even a Kegel. It's a lie. It's a misnomer. And so the jade egg is actually the most similar to the original effective Kegel exercise. And it works. I've had women who suffered from urinary incontinence for decades and eradicate it in 1 week. That's how effective it is. And most vaginas are numb, right? When we talk about, let's say, even women who, it's no big deal that we don't have sex, I would guarantee they have numb vaginas, right? And so if you can't feel very much in your vagina, why would you bother having sex? I get it, right? Like, why would you want to have sex? But when your vagina is awakened and feels alive and sensitive and pleasurable, then you want to have sex all the time. And that's what happens with women who practice with the jade egg.
And so your jade egg pack or kit I actually should have brought it down. It's up in my bedroom. I should have brought it so we could show it on the video, but it's so beautiful, first of all, like the packaging and the gorgeous little bag it comes in. So you can, put stuff in there so you can weight lift with your vagina. And the silk thread and just everything about how you've created it is so beautiful. And you take us through cleansing the egg as well, energetically, before using it. And the exercise, because I've come across jade eggs, I actually had one already before I did your course and got yours. But I wasn't doing it right, basically. And your lessons within Kung Fu Vagina are something I've never heard. I wasn't guided in that way before in how to use it properly. So from doing this, it feels like you say, going to the gym, you don't just kind of do nothing with, move your bicep without holding something in your arm. So now it makes sense. And and my husband loves watching, it's hilarious, but increasing the weights in the bag. And then you feel great about yourself because you're like, I've exercised my vagina. I've got like a great tight vagina that works properly, and so the exercises that you take us through have just, and I did after having my son. After my daughter was an amazing home birth, but after having my son, I did have a slight prolapse, and that's all but gone now. And I just love the exercises. But what I love in the courses as well is the visualizations and the meditations, because this isn't just a practice for the physical, it's integrating our entire being. And that's why I love your work, because it really is this holistic approach. Can you explain kind of what else is involved in Kung Fu Vagina and who it's for and what they will gain from it, and really kind of the type of women that need to be doing this salon?
Right. Well, it's really for everyone. Like, we have women in their 20s who are, or even like teens, who come in and they want to learn this information, up to their 70s, who don't want to be on hormones and they've been given this terrible prognosis, and they don't have to be on hormones and they can get their natural lubrication back, to, women in their 30s and 40s who may have had children or maybe not, women who've had sexual trauma, and just women who may not identify any major issues. They just want to optimize, right? And have a kick-ass vagina.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Who doesn't? Or they hear, oh, really? I can have cervical orgasms. And again, like most women, if they're not actively working out their vagina, they have a numb vagina. And because so much of that numbness can be internalized through trauma, and as we've talked about, different beliefs that we absorb in the culture at large, is that, the approach isn't just here's some exercises, go nuts. It's looking at the whole being, like how are we energetically impacted? How can we clear traumatic experiences from our system? How can we self-pleasure more consciously? How do we give ourselves a yoni massage so that we can map out every millimeter and get to know every millimeter of our anatomy? What are the different parts and areas of our vagina that can have orgasms? What about our breasts? Let's learn this incredible breast massage to really own and inhabit the breast. And so the whole course really is this journey about expunging any potential demons or sources of disconnection that we have to our sexual selves, and then fully owning them in a very powerful way. And as I mentioned earlier, learning how to use our sexual energy as a creative power source. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, it's everything from guided visualizations to journaling to all kinds of different home play exercises, using the egg, self-pleasuring, self-massage techniques, and becoming conscious occupants of our bodies and our sexuality, and learning to work with that energy and create ourselves and our lives.
I love that you said that you have teens even come on the course.
Yeah.
I can imagine that engaging in this kind of work as a teen actually shifts your entire perception around sex and your sexuality. And I would hazard a guess that probably a lot of people think that then it will make them too promiscuous. But I would personally think, through knowing what I know through this work now, that actually it would just encourage that knowing, that inner knowing about their body, and almost the opposite of promiscuity, as in like having sex with just whoever without actually fully embodying that. But knowing themselves, when you know yourself sexually, you choose the right partners, you attract the right partners, you enjoy sex. And I can imagine that any teen who engages in that and starts understanding about their body will be far more educated on sex and therefore make the right decisions around it.
Absolutely. It fosters that self-knowledge and autonomy. And I look at so much of what's out there in the world for teenagers, and porn and this emphasis on casual experiences. And you're right. Like the opposite happens, is that they cultivate this self-confidence and self-knowledge, and they make better choices. They're not just succumbing to peer pressure or what they think someone should do or a person pressuring them. They're actually coming from their own truth with a really powerful, with self-esteem, right? With confidence, and being able to assert their needs because they know their needs, rather than being completely disconnected from them. So, I have even like mothers and daughters. Someone posted on my Instagram the other day, like it's a Palestinian woman and her daughter, like she's in, full gear. And they posted that she learns the content with her daughter. She studies it with her teenage daughter.
Whoa.
And I was just so moved by that, that's anyone all over the world is, well fucked all around the world, right? And blasting through this sexual ignorance and taking on this information. So I love seeing that as well. Like when women sharing this content with their daughters and doing the course with them, so that they can model. And I mean, you are the source as the parent. You are the source of that education for your child. And if you don't educate your child, somebody else will, right? And by educate, I mean lead them astray.
Totally. It's such an important thing. I was, like I said, that Wild Power was kind of my initiation into charting my cycle, understanding my cycle, really starting to connect with that part of myself, my feminine power. And I was so happy when I had a daughter to know that I could impart that wisdom onto her. And almost this level of, wow, I get to rewrite history now. We get to create something new with girls moving forward. And like, what a privilege, how incredible. I just find that so powerful.
Yeah.
Kung Fu Vagina, let's just to go back to that, because it is opening 2 days after this episode airs. Can you, and you are hosting a webinar so that you can talk about what will actually be happening on Kung Fu Vagina. And that's on January the 25th, right?
I would have to look at my phone, but I believe it's the Monday, the week after the salon opens. So
yeah, incredible. So I'm going to put all the details for the salon in the show notes. So if people want to get more information about that or sign up to that straight away, it will be open 2 days after this airs. I'm interested in giving people information about your other courses as well, because something very powerful that you run is your sexual mastery for men.
Yes. So I run a couple of classes for women, vaginal kung fu and how to be a well-fucked woman, and then coming together for couples and Sexual Mastery for Men, and then a holistic pregnancy and orgasmic childbirth class as well called Sexy Mama. So Sexual Mastery for Men is a wonderful deep dive into all things sexual mastery for men. So everything from their ability to build stamina to cock strengthening and lengthening exercises and techniques for pleasuring women and owning their masculine energy. Right now, I would say that there's a big war on the masculine and a real effort to extinguish it. And I'm the opposite. I love masculine men. And if women are really being honest, so do they. And so really encouraging that strength and power and dominance to emerge and be cultivated in men. So yeah, I love that class. I love the breed of men who are interested in that and helping them find that and encouraging them to be in that space.
I mean, the practices that my husband has learned have been life-changing. Everything from kind of, you know, the how to pleasure a woman to, you know, lengthening your the amount of time you can go on for. So these are all things that can be learned. You know, it's not just a case of this is how I made and, you know, that's that. And I think these practices are incredible for all men. So thank you for that.
Glad to hear.
How often should women self-pleasure?
It depends. Like if you have been in a plateau for a long time, I would encourage you to take on a 30-day challenge where every single day you are self-pleasuring. And that doesn't mean you have to get to orgasm every time you do, but spending enough time, and you'll know what that means, right? Of hitting a certain threshold of pleasure with yourself. Apart from that, I would say if you're single, 3, maybe 4 times a week. If you are coupled, you know, same thing, 3 or 4 times a week. I mean, if not daily, is the ideal amount of sex to be having.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, yeah. So I can imagine I'm going to get a lot of messages through about this because it's so different to what we're used to hearing, right?
What are you used to hearing? I don't even know.
I mean, like, yeah, probably not you. Probably not what you're used to hearing. But, you know, that self-pleasure isn't something women engage in that often. You know, especially if in a relationship, I think a lot of women self-pleasure after they've had sex because they haven't orgasmed, but not something to do as a practice necessarily.
Right. It's great self-knowledge, right? And self-awareness, whether you're in a relationship or not, but especially if these different ideas I'm talking about are foreign to you, of deeper vaginal orgasms and having a high libido and having painless, pleasurable periods and menopause. Like to me, that's the norm, right? Like the other things of pain and discomfort and struggle have all been normalized, but they're not normal.
No, 100%. And I often speak about this too, you know, in terms of our hormones and menopause and, you know, we absolutely should not be going through these traumatic births, traumatic menopauses where we're just suffering for years on end. And it's so amazing that this information is there now. And, you know, if women choose to, they can step into it fully and embody that. And because I always say, you know, I work with women from of all ages, but I always talk about preparing for menopause way before you ever reach that. And I think that's just I guess the problem with society generally is we're not living through a preventative approach. So we wait for something to happen and then we kind of just try to do the Band-Aid thing. We try to fix it when it happens, as opposed to finding ways to make sure that we don't have to deal with any suffering when it gets there. And I think that pleasure is a massive part. I know I'm a big fan of Dr. Christiane Northrup, and she talks about this a lot, of how, you know, women experiencing pleasure contributes to an easier menopause, easier transition into
Absolutely.
menopause.
I mean, there's cultures in the world who don't even have a word for menopause because they don't experience it as anything negative or any kind of difficult transition. It's just a blip on the radar. And I would say for people in my work, it's the same thing, right? Where they just, if they're properly tapping into their sexual energy and they are well fucked and they are living in this sexual, you know, radiance, then it's not an issue. Same thing with difficult periods or PMS. To me, those things are all symptomatic of stuck and stagnant sexual energy. The reproductive ailments that manifest as symptoms that people think are just normal or random, they're not. They are a direct result of how much we're occupying that life force, right? If we divorce it from any kind of moral judgment and just strictly look at it as life force energy, right? I know it's hard to, because it's so obscured by the culture at large, this effort to distort what sexual energy really is. But if we just pare it down to life force energy, if you were constantly ignoring that energy and shutting off that energy and, even being like destructive towards that energy, what would happen? You would wither away. Well, that's exactly what happens to people, exactly what happens to their reproductive organs. It's just the barometer. And so when people are truly inhabiting that energy, like I said, it just picks up and enlivens and revitalizes every part of our body and every part of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Okay, rapid fire round, all about you, it's called. Are you ready?
Maybe.
So there's 5, and the first one is always the same, which is wellness is
feeling the best, feeling your best, feeling at home in your own body and your own self.
I love that. Something people get wrong about you.
I actually have no idea, because I don't really take in perceptions in that way. So I really don't know.
Oh, well, that was great. One thing all women should be starting right now.
Jade egg practice.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. With your Jade egg kit specifically, because it is another level.
Right. Yeah.
that's my guidance.
Well, what you said earlier, like there's people, since they've become so popularized at the courtesy of my vagina, they're everywhere now, and people sell them just as eggs, and they tell you to just wear your egg around all day, go shopping with your egg in. Like, it's all ridiculously, frankly, stupid information and wrong, where it's just, like I said, like wandering into the gym and like doing cartwheels all over the gym and doing snow angels on the floor and thinking you had a workout, right? It's ludicrous. And so you actually need to figure out how to use sets and reps and weights and machines to have a proper workout. And that's what I teach. So
and it is a totally different education to the other stuff that I had come across before when it came to jade eggs. Other than orgasms, what's your favorite way to treat yourself?
Surfing and or being in nature.
Oh, that's really nice. And lastly, what are you most enchanted by in a person?
Integrity and genius.
Yeah, same. Okay, Kim, thank you so much. I've enjoyed every second of this. I'm excited for everyone to check you out and check out your courses. And just thank you for your wisdom.
My pleasure. It's been lovely talking to you. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. If you haven't yet heard, I have just released a free journaling course. If you've always wanted to try journaling but just don't know where to start, or you've been hearing how powerful journaling can be but you just don't understand why, or you want to create a daily practice that enhances your life but you just need a little support in doing that without it costing you anything, this course will do all that for you. It is packed with content that will show you just why journaling is important, how to do it, where to start, and how to make it work for you. It is completely free, and that is as a way for me to pay it forward, because journaling really is one of the most integral parts of my growth practice, and I want to give that to you. All you have to do is click on the link in the show notes to get the course sent directly to your inbox. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reconditioned. I am honestly so grateful to each and every person that tunes in. Thank you also for taking responsibility for your own well-being. You should know that just by choosing to listen to podcasts like this that further your well-being, you're moving more deeply into abundance consciousness. Now, don't forget, I have a bunch of free resources over at laurenvakneen.co.uk, as well as every recommendation you could ever need in regards to your well-being on the LV Recommends page, all categorized for your ease. Thank you also to our sponsors. These episodes would not be possible without them, so make sure to check them out and get some pretty awesome discounts on the show notes. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get updated each time a new one is released. Thank you. I appreciate you. Reconditioned is proud to be working with Women for Women International, a charity that supports women survivors of war in 8 war-torn countries around the world. You can help a woman survivor of war transform her life today by visiting womenforwomen.org.uk/donate.